Welcome to Be Admitted 2024. This is the Holliston High School School Counseling Office's annual presentation on the college application process geared towards parents and guardians of juniors. However, this information is applicable for all students and all families of all grade levels, as it can be applied for future years. We hope that you find this information to be informative and helpful as you embark on this exciting time. At this point, we'd like to take a quick pause and introduce the counseling staff. We have myself, Elisa Taylor, followed by Mary Beth Mont, Manny Harwich, and Jennifer Andrews. We have here our caseload allocation for the class of 2025. However, our caseload distribution is slightly different for our freshmen, sophomore, and seniors. However, generally in the same range of the alphabet. You can find all the alpha splits on our website, which we will share towards the end of this presentation. At this point, we encourage you to stop the video and watch the accompanying video that came along with the presentation, the GPA game. We will reference the GPA game throughout the remainder of this presentation, and we're using it to frame our discussion. At this point, we hope you've had the opportunity to watch the GPA game video that accompanied this presentation. As I mentioned, we will be discussing the GPA game and referencing it throughout the presentation. But we want to just pause for a moment and talk a little bit more generally about some of the factors, many of which that came up during the GPA game presentation. As you can see here, we have from the National Association for College Admissions Counseling the list of major factors that contribute to the admissions process and how they are really looked at in the admissions process from colleges over the past 10 years. A survey was done by the NACAC organization. As I mentioned, many of these factors were brought up throughout the game. One thing that we do want to focus on, and we'll discuss in more detail, is the high school transcript. As you can see here, over the course of time, over the past 10 years or so, the high school transcript has remained one of the most important pieces of the review process for admissions. So that's really important. It has not changed over the course of time. But what has changed pretty significantly are the presence of the review of admissions test scores. Over the pre-COVID years, it was actually less important than a lot of people would think, only about 50% importance. But now in the post-COVID years, that first column is 2023, many colleges are not even looking at standardized test scores. We will talk about this in subsequent slides, but we thought it was really helpful to frame our discussion and kind of just address some of those big points that a lot of people commonly think about with the admissions process. So let's talk a little bit more about standardized testing. We have here a picture of an elephant because we like to say it's the elephant in the room. In the GPA game, as you can probably recall, standardized testing was not even addressed. This game was adapted to meet the needs of our students. However, when the game was created over 20 years ago, standardized testing was not even considered one of the factors that they wanted to address. So even over the course of 20 years, the game's organizers decided that they didn't want to include it as part of the process. The reason behind it now not being as important is really due to the pandemic. With the pandemic and the decrease in the availability of testing sites, colleges had to adapt their policies to ensure that they were getting an accurate overview of their applicants. Colleges have started to put less of an emphasis on test scores in the process, and many colleges have even removed the requirement entirely. So they would not even consider scores if students chose to submit them. Even some of the more selective schools, including Harvard, do not require students to submit their test scores. So it truly benefits students who feel that testing is not their thing. It's truly okay to apply test optional. But for some students who do feel that testing accurately reflects their academic record, or for some schools, a small percentage of schools where test scores are considered, students have options. The two major tests are the SAT and the ACT, and there is no preference by the college on which one students submit. We typically encourage students to take both and then choose the one that they feel more connected with throughout the process if they choose to retake it. The SAT itself is divided into two sections, an evidence-based reading section and a math section, and it's scored on a 1600 scale. The ACT has 5 different sections with an optional writing section included, English, reading, math, science, and writing, and it's scored on a 36-point scale. So it's not apples to oranges, but there is a concordance table where students can see how they scored on the ACT, how that would compare to the SAT, and also counselors can help students interpret their scores. But again, as I mentioned, it is truly okay for students to not submit test scores if they are planning on applying to colleges that have a test optional or a test blind policy. We have here at the bottom of the screen, test optional schools. Fairtest.org is an organization that has compiled a list of schools each year that have adopted this test optional or test blind policy. And there are over 2,000 schools in the world that have adopted this policy. So truly, truly okay. It allows students to showcase other aspects of their application that they feel more accurately describe them. So let's talk a little bit more about the transcript and academic rigor. Throughout the game, it was mentioned that the types of classes that students were taking and the grades students were getting in classes, those were constantly factors that were moving students up or down the line in the application review. So what I like to say is that the transcript really is the most important part of the review process, and that your transcript represents 4 years out of your life, where in comparison to standardized testing, that represents 4 hours on one Saturday of your life. So hopefully you can see the emphasis and where colleges are placing more importance in the review. Now with your transcript, this does not include just grades. This includes the grades, but also the classes that you took and the types of classes that you're choosing to take. And some schools call this the rigor of curriculum. Most colleges will review students or applicants in the context of their particular high school. So for example, they cannot compare students who attend Holliston High School with applicants from a school down the road like Hopkinton or Natick, because very different things are offered at all of our different schools. And what's considered a demanding curriculum here in Holliston may not necessarily be challenging at a different school. So the colleges, as I mentioned, typically review in the context of a particular high school, and their representatives that are reviewing applications are typically experts on these particular regions and understand the nuances in our schedules. And they know Holliston pretty well. They become experts on these particular schools. It's important to note at Holliston, it's simply not possible to take more than 5 or 6 AP courses over the duration of their high school experience, whereas that might be 1 year at another high school. So everything looks a little bit different depending on which high school students are applying from. Now, as I mentioned, colleges understand this. They know what is demanding here might not necessarily be demanding at another school. There's also going to be ebbs and flows over the course of high school, and that's okay. Obviously, colleges love to see all A's and all challenging courses over the course of all 4 years, but they understand that there are things that will happen that will bring a student's grades up and down over the course. What colleges really love to see is an upward trend. Perhaps freshman year started in courses that were mostly CP, sophomore year added a couple honors in there, then sprinkled a few APs and honors in junior and senior year, and maintain that high level work. That is great. Colleges also understand that things happen. So for example, in the game, you saw that student who in their senior year received a D on their mid-years. It's really important for that student to explain what may have happened. What may have happened is that student got COVID and they were out of school for a period of time, or there may have been a death in the family. So contextual information is important. So make sure these pieces are shared throughout the application process, and the counselor can typically do that, but the student may also choose to explain it. I also have here the senior year is just as important as any other year. Most colleges won't make a final decision on a student until they see some indication of how that student has performed in their senior year. So it's really, really important for students to consider the level of the courses that they're taking, as well as keep up that high level of performance that they may have in the previous years. This also encourages students to be thoughtful about their selections in their senior year, their courses. It's important to balance. We don't want them to be too overstretched in the types of classes they're taking, but we also don't want a super breezy, easy year. Senior year is the best indicator of how a student will be able to make that transition to colleges. So that's why the colleges are paying attention to the senior year. Next up, we want to talk a little bit about recommendations. The recommendation gives the colleges a great opportunity to learn more about the student outside of their academic record, learn more about who they are as a person, as an individual, and a contributor to an academic setting. Now, most colleges do require a counselor letter of recommendation, and most require only one teacher letter of recommendation, although there are some schools that are specific that they do need more than one, and if they need more than one, they may need one in a specific subject area, or specific majors may require additional recommendations. For example, nursing may require a math and a science, or an English and a science, whatever it may be. But by and large, for the majority of our students, only one teacher recommendation is necessary. Now, the counselor recommendation, the counselor will write for all the students that require it, becomes an opportunity to share more about that student as a person, and also provide any context about situations that may have happened over the course of high school. So, for example, with that student that received that D in their senior year, or perhaps it was earlier in high school, it would be helpful to explain any extenuating circumstances that might not be readily available by just looking at a transcript. Again, was there a death in the family? Was there an illness? Something that can share more information, doesn't necessarily excuse the grade, but especially if it's an outlier, was there something additional going on? Additionally, we are looking at the teacher recommendations. So as I mentioned, only one is typically required. Sending more is not necessarily better. Most colleges are reviewing in excess of 90 applications a day. If they only require one, they only want to see one. They read everything, so being kind to their eyes is helpful. And also remembering that if you're asking someone to write you a letter of recommendation, it's because they have something good to say about you. So unless that letter of recommendation from a teacher is going to provide something different than what other people have shared, you can really hold off on it unless it is required. In terms of the counselor and teacher recommendations, most of the counselors and many teachers do require that students submit some sort of survey or brag sheet to share more about their experiences throughout high school. The counselors all have our links to our brag sheets and questionnaires on the school counseling website, which we'll show you towards the end of the presentation. If that is something that is required, which all the counselors do require it, we ask that you fill that out in advance of us writing the letter of recommendation. We have a parent one as well as the student one, and as I mentioned, teachers may require that as well. Now, is it important to send outside recommendations? Again, up to you. Most colleges will not even have an opportunity for you to submit that, but if they do give you an option to submit an additional one, be thoughtful about including this piece. Can they share a different perspective on you as a student? The essay. The essay is next up, and it really is the part of the application that trips a lot of students up. A lot of students will come down to see us and have no idea what to write about, and that's oftentimes the biggest piece of the work that we're doing with students, is kind of helping students figure out what they want to share. It becomes really the opportunity for students to share more about themselves in areas that aren't easily accessible to the reader of their application. It's important for students not to repeat other aspects of their application unless they wanted to go into more detail, or if it shares more about them that isn't readily available. Now, it's important to know that we are holding seminars throughout the remainder of the school year on topics such as essays. So we are going to be working with students on this, and we have many prompts and activities available for students to kind of help jog their thinking. But in general, it really is just another opportunity for students to share who they are. Now, the colleges give you many prompts on what you should be writing about. The Common Application is the most popular way for students to apply to colleges, and they give you 6 different prompts, but topic number 7 is topic of your choice. So truly, the world is your oyster. Write about whatever you'd like. It's really important to proof it, though, so we want students to have friends look at it, a parent or guardian, perhaps a teacher. Counselors are happy to look at it, but it's really important to have another set of eyes look over it. We also really do not encourage students to be specific about particular colleges in their essays. and write to a particular school and say, that's the reason I've always dreamed of attending Boston College, when in fact they were applying to Boston University. So be very careful about doing that if you do choose to do that, because although colleges know you're applying to lots of schools, it might not leave the best taste in their mouth. And really work with your counselor throughout the writing process, whether you're writing the short supplemental questions or if you're doing the main personal statement. We are happy to support you throughout this. It's just really, as I mentioned, another opportunity to share who you are as a person. Important to know is that many colleges do not require or even offer an interview as part of the application process. So the essay in a way becomes a chance for the admissions representative to really take a journey with you outside of the numbers and all of the kind of rote details in your application.
Extracurricular activities, service, athletics, and employment. Just like your transcript, a resume tells a story. Extracurricular activities are a part of a high school experience that certainly can enrich every student's lives now and also set them up for future success. When we think about all of these opportunities that students have, it is a chance for them to share interests that they have beyond the classroom. These activities do not need to be connected to the high school, but they can also be in the community and in the greater world. They show values. They also teach skills that students have a chance to develop and demonstrate commitment. So there are a number of very traditional extracurricular activities. Some of them we did back when we were in high school, and some of them are brand new. There are lots of opportunities connected to the high school. I know within our local community of Holliston, we have a number of activities that are available as well, from service to employment at the Superette. Students who participate in athletics and want to continue to do that in college are often connected to a program or a club outside of the high school. And generally speaking, they have opportunities available to them through those programs as well to learn more. But we encourage every single student here at Holliston High School to get involved in some activity, whether it is the Nerd Club, a service activity, sports, employment, volunteering as a tutor, doing music and singing down at the tree lighting in town recently. We encourage every single kid to be able to find something that they're interested in and explore that and develop, a passion hopefully, and something that they can take with them when they leave. Student aid includes grants, scholarships, work-study jobs, and loans. Grants and scholarships are considered types of gift aid or free money, which just means they do not have to be repaid. They are available through federal and state governments, colleges and universities, and local and national private organizations. Scholarships are generally awarded to students with special qualifications, such as academic, athletic, or artistic talent. Some are available because of where you or your parents work or because you come from a certain background. For example, there are scholarships for military families. There are a number of different ways to find scholarships, including the financial aid office at the college you plan to attend. You can look online. Google is my best friend and can also be yours. Be careful. Make sure the scholarship information and the offers you receive are legitimate. And remember, you should never pay to find scholarships or other financial aid. Some online search engines you can use are bowl.org, College Board, FastWeb, and Going Merry. I also want to share some information about the FAFSA, which is a form that we encourage all families to use and apply for aid every year. FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid, and it's important to be considered an on-time filer, and sometimes there's merit money attached to filing the FAFSA. So please, please, please make sure you fill out the FAFSA. The CSS profile is also in addition to the FAFSA. The FAFSA is used at all public and private nonprofit institutions in the United States. The CSS profile has a list of schools that use it in addition to the FAFSA, and that can be found at the website. Another opportunity that I would encourage all of you to consider is using the net price calculator, which every institution in the United States has to have by law. So if you click on either admissions or financial aid, and you click on the net price calculator, you'll be asked a series of questions from that institution, and it will spit out a number for you that is getting better and better at determining and matching what the FAFSA and the CSS profile do for you when you actually submit a formal application. This is just an estimator, but it has become very good at estimating the cost at each particular institution. And then last but not least are our local scholarships, where students will have the opportunity to apply for scholarships from the Holliston community. We are so fortunate to live and work in this community. Our benefactors are so incredibly generous, and we have thousands of dollars that are given away each year to students who graduate from Holliston High School to use at the institution where they will begin their post-secondary journey.
Types of applications. There are a number of different ways for students to apply to colleges. Today I'm going to talk about the deadlines and also how students actually apply. You may have heard the terms early action, early decision, regular admissions, and rolling admissions. These are all some ways and common deadlines that students use to apply to school. Every college is different, so it's important that students read and research their colleges so they know which admissions decision they're applying for. Any early deadline assumes that students are ready to apply. They've researched their schools, they've visited them, their grades through their junior year are indicative of who the student is. Maybe they've taken the SAT or ACT, and they're ready to apply. Early deadlines typically are November or early fall, and they have a decision by late December, early January. Early action is typically a non-binding agreement, meaning it's early notification. The students can apply to as many schools as they want early action, but they are not obligated to attend. On the other hand, early decision is binding. It's a binding agreement between the students and the families and the college or university. Students are obligated to attend, so it's really reserved for the student's top school. If financial aid isn't a concern, this is an opportunity for students. And in the game, we noted that the student was bumped up a few spaces because it can be a benefit if the school is the student's top choice and shows the demonstrated interest, which I'll talk about next. Regular decision is the most common application option. Students can apply to as many schools as they want under regular decision. Once the college has reviewed all the applications, then they will render a decision. Typically, students are applying around January during their regular decision, and they need to notify their colleges by May 1st of their decision. Rolling is a continuous application cycle. Students apply as they're ready, and colleges will review applications as they come into the admissions office. While in some cases this may also show a priority deadline for each college, it's better to apply to rolling schools in the fall of the senior year, and in particular if a student is looking for a specific major or program. There's also terms such as restrictive early action, single choice early action. Again, every school is different, so please encourage your student to read and know the specific deadlines for their colleges. Now, in terms of what applications to use, the decision is really what is right for your student, depending on the offerings of each college. The Common App is the most widely used and most popular. It's accepted at over 1,000 colleges and universities. It tends to streamline the process because there's one essay. The Coalition app is not as popular with our students, but it is still an option. And then there's the institutional application, which is also called this college-specific application. Schools such as MIT, Georgetown, and the University of California System Schools would have a college-specific application. Demonstrated interest. Colleges and universities will use demonstrated interest in some capacity in the college admissions process. Roughly 68% of college admissions offices will take into account demonstrated interest because they are trying to track what types of students are applying to their schools, where their demographics are, what kinds of students they're attracting, and who they may not be attracting, so they can create more programming to attract a wider variety of students. Schools also want to try to determine their college yield. So they want to know that if they offer admissions, what is the likelihood of the student attending? Some applicants use early decision as a way to hedge their bets and show their demonstrated interest in a school. So what does demonstrated interest look like? It could be attending campus tours, information sessions, webinars. It could be reaching out and speaking with the college admissions officer. Perhaps it's meeting them at a college fair, or when they come in to visit at Holliston High School in the fall, it's sitting down and talking with them. Oftentimes, the college will ask a student to fill out a questionnaire or an inquiry card. This is so that the college can connect with the student and, again, track the interest in the student. Anytime a student is hearing from a college admissions rep, we highly would suggest them to respond back in a timely manner. It's really important in the admissions process that they do this so that the college is seeing that their continued interest. We like to talk about demonstrated interest as finding a student's fit. If a student is going to invest the money to apply to the school, they should be researching the school in advance. And so this also means attending information sessions, campus tours, maybe an interview. Really try to connect and learn about the school as much as possible. This is the best indicator of what is right for the student and helps with the college admissions puzzle. So students' demonstrated interest not only may benefit the school, but the student in discovering what they are looking for in a college.
So we know this can be a really stressful process for our students and their families, but what's really important for everyone to remember that college admission decisions are not a statement of a student's worth. All colleges have institutional goals, and those are things that we might not even know about and factors that do influence some admissions decisions. Colleges need to enroll a class of students that meets their diversity goals, that meets their academic goals, and also meets their financial goals. They have a bottom line that they need to fulfill. They also may have factors that we're not aware of. For instance, their star breaststroke swimmer may have just graduated and they need to replace that person on their swim team roster with another star breaststroke swimmer. So if you or your student is not a star breaststroke swimmer, that spot will not be available. So we really emphasize that students should focus on what they can control in their lives and in their application, so they can make sure that they keep their academics strong, they continue to work on their extracurricular activities, and they maintain all their strong personal qualities. Speaking of personal qualities, integrity is of the utmost importance in a college application. The Common Application and any other application that a student may be filling out requires each student to affirm that their application is factually true and honestly presented. And that means not stretching the truth, not projecting what may happen in the spring, and certainly not outright lying. As a matter of fact, an application may be randomly selected for verification, which means that a college could pick up the phone and call me and say, hey, has this applicant actually been president of 16 clubs? And if that student is actually president of 16 clubs, then I will say, yes, they're a very involved student, and that is true. Then the college will say thank you for that information, and they'll continue to evaluate that application. If I say actually they're only president of one club, then most likely they will drop that applicant from the applicant pool and no longer consider them for admission. And really, ultimately, the goal is for each student to find their right fit college. It's almost like matchmaking. You don't want to be accepted to a college under false pretenses, and you're probably not going to be happy at a college where you had to misrepresent yourself to gain admission. We want to make sure that students find a place to land where they fit right in academically, socially, and financially, and that they are accepted for being their best selves. And while it may feel like the power is out of your control right now, you are asking for admission to several colleges, in the end, the power shifts back to you, and we want our students to feel empowered that ultimately they get to make the choice about what college of those to which they've been accepted is the best fit for them. When it comes time to hit submit on a college application, it's vitally important that the application is complete. And it is really important for our students to remember that every college application is different, and it's the student's responsibility to understand what constitutes a complete application for each of the colleges where they're applying. Even on the Common App, there is the Common App section of the Common App, which is the same for all colleges, but then there are the individual college sections of the Common App. So your student is going to add the colleges that they're planning on applying to, and each one of those colleges has their own set of questions. They could be as simple as a few questions where they have to select from some drop downs or a radio button, but it could also be a whole number of additional supplemental essays or additional academic information that the student needs to be sure is complete. So they need, in the Common App, they need to make sure that not only is the Common App tab complete, but all of the individual colleges' questions sections are complete as well. Part of a complete application is also knowing how many letters of recommendation you need and from whom. Some colleges only require one letter of recommendation, and it must be from a teacher. Some colleges require only one letter of recommendation, and it could be from a teacher or a counselor. Some colleges require a counselor letter of recommendation, some don't. So counselors will write for all of their students, and as mentioned before, students should request a letter of recommendation from one teacher, but they tell us in SCORE, which is our application management program that you will learn a little bit more about in the following slide, it is the student's responsibility to look in SCORE, make sure that they've requested the correct number of letters of recommendation for each college. In addition, there is a portal called the SSAR or the SRAR, which stands for the Self-Reported Academic Record. Only some colleges require this, and this underlined portion of the slide is a hyperlink to the page that tells you which colleges require the self-reported academic record. The student should check if the college requires that SRAR. And yes, it feels totally redundant, and yes, we send transcripts to all the colleges that students apply to, but if a college requires the SRAR, the application is considered incomplete until the SRAR is filled out completely, attached to that college, and submitted in the SRAR portal. Finally, it's really, really important, and again, the student's responsibility to check their email. Once they hit submit on a college application, they're not done. They're going to get an email from the college saying, "Thank you so much for applying to our college. Here are your temporary credentials to set up your applicant portal." Then they need to go in, set up their applicant portal, update their credentials, And that is where they will find, just for that specific college, if they're missing any materials and where they can upload those materials. And it's also where they'll find out their admissions decision, most likely. So these are all really important pieces of a complete application.
To wrap up the presentation, we want to talk a little bit about SCORE. So SCOIR is pronounced SCORE. SCORE is our relatively new college application management software. It has replaced Naviance. So if you have an older child, Naviance was previously used to send documents and for students to organize themselves throughout the application process. SCORE was introduced a few years ago, and we've really enjoyed using it. It's very user-friendly. One of the main benefits of SCORE is that parents and guardians receive their own access to this platform as well, where they can do college searches and also make suggestions to their students on particular schools. Ultimately, though, the student has the control over which schools they choose to add to their final list and which schools they will be applying to. When students are ultimately applying to colleges, SCORE is the mechanism that the high school will be using to submit letters of recommendation, letters of recommendation, as well as any transcripts. So all of that information is sent electronically. We don't have the time, unfortunately, to go over all the specifics of SCORE, but it is a fairly user-friendly platform, and it gives you access to many robust features, including utilizing college search features. You can compare two colleges, and you can even look at the scattergrams. If you have an older student, you probably remember the scattergrams in Naviance. The scattergrams is a graph of each school that shows you the applicants from a particular high school. So here, Holliston High School, and it shows you how those students that have applied to that particular school have fared. So over the course of 5 or so years, students that are applying to UMass, you can see average GPAs, average SAT scores if they submitted it, and how they have fared. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, standardized test scores are not as important, but it is still a useful tool. The scattergram tool is useful in helping predict, what might be an appropriate fit for your particular student. So we will be sending out invites. If you are not already in the system, you will receive one over the course of the week, and you will be able to explore. So we encourage you to have fun with it. SCORE is an awesome platform, and we hope you will find it useful throughout this process. Included as part of the handouts to this presentation was a college planning checklist that is Holliston High School specific. You can find the link here as well as a QR code, but the actual checklist is also attached to the email that you should have received following the presentation. It is divided into specific years, so freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, and senior year, and should give families an idea of things to be doing during a particular time frame. By no means a requirement, but in general should give you an idea of where you should have your focus. And then next to that is the school counseling website. We encourage you to bookmark this website. It is a wealth of information, particularly on the forms and resources section of the website. We have all of the former presentations that we've done in the past, or any sort of information that we receive from colleges, all live over here. We are planning on revamping the website slightly to make it a little bit more user-friendly, but for the time being, this is where you can find everything, and we will be sending out updates as soon as the newer website is ready. Upcoming events. So this is only the beginning. As I mentioned, this is the kickoff to the college admissions process for our junior families. So over the course of the remainder of the year, we will be offering seminars to our junior students during DSV. Beginning later this month, students will be invited to come down and learn more about each of the individual topics that we discussed here today. So they have a general overview of the admissions process. We're also really excited to offer the Insider's Guide to College Admissions, which is essentially college panels. This is a virtual event. We've had it virtually over the past few years and have had a great response. We've had 30 plus colleges attend over the course of the last few years, and they share more about their specific colleges, majors, programs, anything that you might not know, and they're attending from all across the country. So it's a really great way to get a quick overview about schools. We are also happy to provide a college application boot camp the week prior to the start of school. We hold this in late August and invite seniors to come in, and we have different sessions on a variety of topics with essays, resumes, Common App score, whatever it may be. Students can get some specific assistance in areas that they need some support. We're also really excited to offer the nuts and bolts of the application process, which is an event typically held in September of the senior fall. It's geared towards the parents and guardians of seniors, where we go over more of the nitty-gritty of the college application process with the logistical pieces, when you have to submit things, who's responsible for what different things mean. So we'll be sending out more communication on that next fall. And we are also really excited to welcome over 100 different colleges and universities to Holliston High School each fall, where these are led by admissions representatives from these particular schools who are oftentimes the readers of our students' applications. They lead short presentations during DSB on their particular schools, and it gives students a great opportunity to ask questions, really get anything that they'd like answered, and get a better interaction or a better face-to-face with that particular person. So this concludes our presentation. We hope that you found it helpful. Your student's counselor is always available for any questions or concerns you may have, so please don't hesitate to reach out to us via email, phone. We're always happy to set up individual appointments on the school counseling website. You will have access to our individual You Can Book Me links, which is our online calendar, so feel free to schedule an appointment there. We also encourage you to follow us on social media, Facebook and Instagram. We are at Holliston SCO. We try to update it regularly and try to engage with our users, so definitely follow us there, and we post lots of updates. And stay tuned for more information. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks.